Hi, Dina.
Hi.
Let me introduce ourselves. I'm Ben Casnocha, an entrepreneur and writer in San Francisco, and you are Dina Kaplan, president of The Path.
Yes, I guess I go by founder and president. Sure.
Founder and president. All right. So let's start by hearing about The Path. What is The Path? What are you guys doing? You need lots of press and buzz. Tell us what it's doing now, and then maybe back up a little bit and talk about how you founded it.
Yeah, definitely. I'm happy to, Ben, and thanks for chatting with me today. So, the path teaches ancient meditation techniques, but in a very modern way. So, I mean, look, at a very high level, we aim to raise global consciousness. But one level down from that is to make people more aware of themselves and also their impact on others. But really, day to day, what we think about a lot is how to bring people into a daily meditation practice. And I know we'll be talking about meditation a lot. We want to build a community, which we've definitely done. And then we want to provide people with a transformative experience. So, right now, what we're doing is all in person. So, we have a pretty big, really robust community in New York. A lot of the people in the Path community are startup founders and CEOs, the world that you and I are very familiar with, also people in fashion and film and publishing. So, what's funny is that when we bring in these teachers, like we've had Matthew Ricard come in and talk to the path, and both he and his people come in and people almost want to just drop all their things on the ground. They've never seen a group like this before because it's young people, it's people that are really doers, and it's people maybe a little like you and I, if that's fair to say, that are just looking for something else. So right now what we're doing, I guess if we were talking tech language, we'd say that we have five products. We have Tuesday evening meditations that are at the Standard, which is beautiful. We're in the penthouse of this gorgeous building in the East Village in New York. We have a once a month social event. We want to bring people together for a wisdom talk. And sometimes it's someone like Matthew Ricard or Sharon Salzberg. This month of May, we had a teacher, someone come in and talk to us about the meditation of travel, something you and I could talk a lot about. This month, we're actually doing meditation and sex. So, we're not usually such a saucy company, but,
That's
meditation.
not relevant to me. Travel definitely is, though.
But so it's a combination of very deep wisdom talks and different things that relate to meditation and our lives. We have courses that we run, so we'll go deeper on a subject regarding mindfulness or mantra meditation or how to live with more ease. We have workshops. We're launching retreats. Actually, in a week, we have our first retreat that's in Montauk. We're doing another one with Sharon Salzberg in the fall, which we're really excited about. And then we have a teacher training program that I'm actually in right now. So what's great about that is that we're training people to become teachers. Right now in New York, there's really not an easy way to become a teacher. You could go, off to India or Nepal, or they have some 2-year programs or 4-year programs. But we've condensed a lot of the wisdom and the practice of those 2 and 4-year programs into a beautiful 3-month program. So I'm actually in that right now, and our first set of graduates will come out on June 25th. So
You're
that's exciting.
you're teaching the program,
No,
or you're
what's funny is that I'm actually in it while I'm also leading. I led the closing meditation of Further Future, and
okay.
I just came from TED to lead a meditation. I am very fortunate in that I get asked to lead a lot of meditations, but I wanted to go through the program myself. It's very deep on mindfulness and loving kindness. So it's a
And
pleasure to facilitate it and be a student also.
so when I noticed you use the word wisdom talk instead of Dharma talk, say what sort of religious or spiritual system informs the meditations that are done on Tuesday evenings at your center?
Yeah, it's a very thoughtful question because I had my inspiration for the path on a 10-day silent retreat in India. I know you've done one of those, the Vipassanas. And I just thought, this is incredible. My mind is changing. I am going to come out of this a better person. Everyone should have the chance to experience this, but it doesn't need to be this hard. So I wanted to make it easier, basically be an easier onboard or on ramp if you think about a highway for people interested in meditation. But the other part is that I think some people are scared about meditation and the religious connotations, or is it going to be too. The word spiritual, I don't think scares people. It would be, is it going to be too out there? And, I'm a little bit afraid to use these words, but, is it going to be too hippie for me or new age? Or is it just not going to be something that I would want to go to or that I'd feel comfortable bringing my very mainstream boyfriend or girlfriend or husband or wife? And so the path has been created to really cater to people that want to, gosh, dare I say it, a mainstream experience with meditation. We're not messing with the actual techniques, but there's not a lot of woo woo that's involved in the teaching of it.
Gotcha. So, how many of your teachers or classes cite Buddhist texts, Hindu texts, or other sort of formal spiritual traditions, or is it entirely stripped of any religious references?
So teachers definitely will sometimes quote from Buddhist texts, or they can quote from the Bhagavad Gita, for sure. I mean, generally the Tuesday evening sits are really just a straight meditation, but then we have a forum for questions and answers and for people to ask about what's behind this and or how the practice is going for them, sort of anything and everything for 10 to 15 to 20 minutes after the practice is. What's funny is that for the place that we sit in, which is really wanting to bring more people into meditation and to bring in mainstream people that might have found it or be running a startup. There have been, I've shied away from too much talk about the heart chakras or other things that might feel alienating to some people. So, what we try to do is stay very true. We are very true to the ancient meditation techniques. And in teaching those techniques, it feels, I mean, it works on the mind, it works on the body. We can talk more about how and why that happens, but all of that other stuff, it doesn't come up that much in those Tuesday evening meditations. For the socials, when we have wisdom talks, I am conscious of who's going to be speaking. And so far we really haven't had an issue with anyone wanting to talk about anything that felt like it was outside of what we would feel comfortable with and growing and building the path.
Gotcha. So, for the folks who are coming to the path, how much are they paying, and sort of what's the relationship with the customer in terms of what you pay and what you get for that, and then also what are the types of people who are attracted to this type of environment and meditation? I think you may have mentioned, or maybe this is in one of the articles about the path, that the social hour afterwards is actually quite a networking environment, or a lot of industry people, and so they're meditating and connecting within, but then also being part of a community that leans pretty professional too.
Yeah, I mean, we didn't quite expect that, but I guess it makes sense, right? Because after you do a meditation, you're so relaxed and you're so open. We've had people fall in love. We've had people become best friends. I'm constantly hearing about people that are now rooming together or traveling in Europe together after meeting at the path, which is lovely. I have people that do business deals. I think people are just very open. So whatever's meant to happen, happens, which is beautiful. I think in terms of who it attracts, I am really, really proud that we are the place that people feel really comfortable bringing their husband or that girlfriend that said, "I'll never do meditation. That's not for me. It's too out there." People very much feel comfortable bringing someone to the path. I mean, part of that is that we host the we host the meditations and the events in these beautiful places, so it's an incredible experience. I came to the idea of founding the path by realizing that that word light is an enlightenment. So why can't meditations be full of light? Why can't they be beautiful? And yet everywhere they were being held in New York at the time, it was somewhere dark and they were constantly running out of toilet paper. There were no paper towels. The hot water didn't work. So the path, overall, it's fair to say, is a beautiful experience. In terms of the numbers, it's just $24 to attend the practices, and then you often get food with that. We always have coconut water and tea and all sorts of goodies that come with that. A lot of people will bake for us. We have a lot of vegan bakeries that will come with all of these cookies and gluten-free, sugar-free, delightful items. So it's definitely a good value. The socials range. We often will serve dinner with them. So we'll serve dinner and wine, although non-alcoholic stuff too, and the speaker, and dessert and all sorts of stuff. And maybe that'll be $50 or maybe $75. Everyone tells us we should charge more. The choruses are just about $120 usually for a 4-part chorus that might meet, say, every Monday in June. So I think those are the main answers to the questions you had.
Yeah. And for most of the people who are attending, what are their kind of backgrounds, demographics? And would assume that for many of them, this is their first introduction to meditation and sort of a spiritual tradition. How many folks are bringing past experiences or previous religious journeys versus they're kind of purely secular and don't have a history with any tradition?
Sure. I mean, also, by the way, I should mention we have a monthly membership that's quite popular. So for $85, you'll get everything for that month, including the social, and that often includes dinner and the talk. So that's a really good, if you're in town, that's a very good deal. So that tends to be very popular. So when we started, this is evolving a bit. When we started, it was, I mean, it was the people that I knew. So it was all startup founders and CEOs and people in film and fashion and publishing, and that might be why, yeah, we ended up on the cover of the New York Times style section as the best networking event in New York. It was partly just because those are the people that I knew, so we're getting them together in this relaxed environment. And partly, I do think it's that meditation makes you so open and relaxed that it's sort of like a good glue to the, I don't know, tissue. Am I making a terrible metaphor of a new relationship? Now it has evolved. It used to be very, very young. I almost used to think I needed to get my hair done to go to the path because everybody was beautiful and young and a very certain demographic. Now, what's so cool about it is that it is wildly diverse. So we have people from every ethnicity that you could imagine coming, super, super diverse when you're looking at the crowd of, say, people that are listening to a speaker at the social. It's also much more age diverse, so that we have older people that feel super comfortable coming. People bring their parents, which is so nice. They'll say, hey, this is the thing that I'm doing in New York, and I really want my mom to get it. So people bring their parents. Definitely at its core, it's mostly young people, like in their 20s and 30s, but really people of all ages come and feel welcome and come back to a ton of the things that we're doing.
Right. And before we get to your story and how you came to this, I think that's super fascinating and inspiring. One sort of maybe more detailed question about the actual practice. Does and maybe the wisdom talks too, does it imply or assume kind of belief in a higher power? And how is the notion of God and higher power talked about in this context? Because I think for a lot of, there are a large contingent of spiritual but not religious people and sort of mystical atheists and other folks who are not into talking about God, don't believe in God, whatever, but are finding themselves drawn to meditation practices, although there are plenty of practices and retreats and, of course, forms of Buddhism and so on that actually do talk about afterlife and other sorts of things that imply sort of deities. So where do you guys have an organizational point of view on that? Do you select teachers or have instructions for how to talk about that point in particular?
It's a very good question. It's a very thoughtful question. It hasn't really come up. That in particular hasn't come up. We do have a teacher from the Hare Krishna background who really wants to lead with that and talk about it and how it's been misunderstood in the US, which it has, and have people do the chanting of that, which is a beautiful chanting. And if you go to India, you hear it all the time. It's funny as I think about growing the path, I feel like we're too new, we're too young, that I'm not sure that that's the battle that we want to take on at this moment. I think a year or two in, we definitely could. It really, that hasn't come up. What we really believe in, and that's why I started by talking about our mission, is teaching meditation, and then with the meditation, the wisdom, and the God and the deity side. It hasn't come up specifically. I think what happens, Ben, is that the meditation works. It does start to make you more thoughtful. It makes you more mindful. Those are all things that we want to have happen, make people more aware of themselves and their impact on others. Do we need for God to be involved? I don't think that we do. I don't think that we do. I mean, a lot of the wisdom of the Buddha, and some people refer to Buddhism as, less of a religion. It's more of a philosophy. It's how do we stop our bad behavior? How do we stop our reactive behavior and make us more responsive so that we're responding thoughtfully to situations that happen throughout the day rather than just reacting? So that change, which to go into it for a tiny bit, it's through noticing the negative sensations you have in your body. If I'm stressed, I'll feel it in my stomach. So if I start to feel that stress in my stomach in the form of unpleasant sensations, as the Buddha would say, then I should know at that moment I shouldn't go in and have a big talk with a colleague, or an investor, or a potential investor, or a loved one. I should know I'm stressed. I need to get up. I need to take a walk. I need to take at least a breath. That type of change in one's behavior, I think, is really profound. And to understand what's happening with you and to change your behavior, it doesn't have to take you down this path of thinking about what does God have to do with that. It's just how can I change my behavior as a person and become a better version of myself.
Gotcha. Okay. So let's roll the clock back 5 years, or however long it was. When we first met, you were a technology entrepreneur working hard, maybe too hard, and talk about the moment when you decided you needed to make a change in your own life, and then what experiences did you have that informed the founding of the path?
So, yes, when you and I met, I was an entrepreneur. I was perceived as very successful. I was held up as this role model, especially for women entrepreneurs. There were not that many women founders at the time of a scaling tech startup. What was so funny about that is that I myself was playing a role. I really didn't know of any super successful women founders in the country. So I just thought, what would Peter Thiel do? What would Jeff Bezos do? What would Mark Zuckerberg do? Like all these guy entrepreneurs. And I didn't really know them very well. I knew some of them, but not well. And so I just imagined that they would work all the time and that they would be really tough. I mean, who knew if I was correct? And I don't know where I got this from. But so I worked really hard and I was really tough. And I wasn't myself. And that ended up not scaling as the company scaled. And it ended up manifesting in panic attacks. I was not mindful at the time. I was not meditating. I was just gunning it as a founder. So I started having panic attacks and I started having them a lot. And I had them all over the world. And I started having them in New York. And it was so bad that I couldn't take a subway for 2 years because I would have them when I was underground and think that something terrible was about to happen. And it was bad enough that I actually, for 2 years, could not walk down a New York City street by myself. So as a good COO, I was COO of the company. I just solved the problem. I took cabs everywhere or I found someone to walk with. But I never really thought about maybe there's something really wrong. And then one day I couldn't cross the street to get to my office. Go right across the street, and I didn't think I could do it without passing out in the middle of the intersection. And I lived in fear of doing that and then having a cab roll over my body or something. And in that moment, looking at my office and not able to get there, I said to myself, I am done. I need to live in the opposite part of the world in the opposite way. And I did a transition with the board. I was responsible about how I handled it. I quit. I did a transition with the board, and then I booked a one-way flight to Indonesia, and I spent 2.5 years traveling the world. And part of that was that I needed to have fun again. I needed to refine myself as a woman, as a girl, rather than pretending to be a guy. But the other part is that I was meant to find meditation. And it came to me in the form of a good-looking guy ahead of me in line at customs when I landed in India one day. And he said, "What are your plans?" And I said, "I don't really have any." And he said, "Why don't you come on a 10-day silent retreat with me?" And I said, "That sounds great." So this turned out to be the worst date of all time because it was gender segregated and silent. So that was pretty much the last I saw of this guy. But I did go. And on day 8 of meditating 10 hours a day in silence, I had a huge insight, which was that I'd optimized my entire life to be popular, and I decided I no longer want to do that. I just want to be authentic. And in that moment, I was like this flash of lightning came through me, which said, you're going to come out of this retreat a better person. And then, like we were saying earlier, everyone should have a chance to do this, but it doesn't need to be this hard. It was like this voice came to me that said, when you come back to the United States, you'll start a company to bring meditation to the mainstream and you'll call it The Path. And that was it. I still traveled for 2 more years, but then when I finally figured out how to start the company, I flew back to the United States and started The Path literally a month later.
What did you do after that first 10-day retreat and for the next 2 years?
Well, so right after that retreat, I went to the Taj Mahal, which was pretty cool. I then promptly fell in love. Met someone, as often happens after these vipassanas. You're so.
I think isn't there a phrase for that, like vipassana romance? There's a concept someone's coined about sort of obsessive love that can manifest in the silent sitting in a
that's so
vipassana
funny. It
retreat.
happened twice for me. All right, I'll apologize. I have to walk a tiny bit with you guys, although as I plug in my computer, I hope we'll be okay. So what I did was I ended up traveling a lot. Or actually, I can flip it over. Hold on. We'll cut it together. Okay. So after the Vipassana, I still continued to travel. And what I really needed to do was I needed to conquer a lot of fears. I had a lot of fear. As you can tell from the story of running my startup, I I was afraid to be myself. I didn't know how to be myself in that role. And what I ended up doing was conquering every physical fear that I could think of. I went bungee jumping, which I was deathly afraid of, zip lining, which I was really afraid of. My biggest fear of all was scuba diving. Because if you remember, I was afraid to walk down a street. You can imagine how scary it is to think about trying to breathe underwater. And then coupled with that is the fact that when I was a kid growing up, I went out on my first scuba diving trip and someone died that I knew. Someone that I knew died on that trip. So when I went in that water and conquered that fear and came out of it, not only okay, but loving scuba diving, and it's now one of my favorite things to do, I felt fearless. And with that, I was able to conquer my biggest fear of all, which was just speaking up for myself and learning how to be myself in any role, even running a company.
Wow. And and meditation, the meditation practice that you practice personally, independent of the path, how would you characterize it? Is it in the tradition of the 10-day retreat that you did, or is it some other type of practice?
So it evolves. And at the path, we say that there are thousands of types of meditation in the world, but we divide them into four categories. Mindfulness would be one, mantra based would be another, a third would be energizing, and a fourth would be meditation to accomplish a goal, which might be compassion or gratitude. So my practice, and we teach all four at the path. We say they're each valid and choose the one that feels charming to you or helps you accomplish what is important for you. So I spent January of this year in India studying with a great Vedic or mantra meditation teacher named Tom Knowles. So after that, I did Vedic for a few months. My native, my most comfortable, my sort of home practice is Vipassana. It's the Anapana breathing, the focus on the breath that you do for the first 3 days of those retreats. So generally, although my practice evolves month to month and year to year, but normally what I would do would be about 10 minutes of the Anapana breathing, 10 minutes of compassion meditation. And then each month I work on something, sort of like Gretchen Rubin's The Happiness Project. So I work on some aspect of my personality that I want to evolve. And so I will often spend those last 10 minutes focused on my goal of the month. That's quite personal.
Interesting. So in the last just couple minutes we have, obviously the path is one resource and one new company that's emerged in the space. There have been a lot of different apps, companies, conferences, books, of course, in the last few years that have come out with a sort of secular blend of spirituality and meditation. What are the apps, conferences, or people who you think are doing the best job at both faithfully representing the ancient wisdom, but also making it accessible to newcomers?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. I mean, I guess I started my company because I didn't see something that was out there for someone like me. It's probably similar to your background as well, for a startup founder that wanted to be surrounded by people like them. I mean, I sent a lot of people to Vipassanas. I probably sent 120 or 30 people to those Vipassanas. If they only charged, I could get a commission on it.
Are these
I guess
which Vipassana retreats?
just the Dhamma or the
Okay,
ones,
yeah,
the Cuenca
yeah.
retreats. I am mindful that those are recorded. They were recorded a long time ago. Cuenca has since passed. There is something a bit old school about it. I mean, literally and figuratively. So I have started to recommend to people that they go to the Spirit Rock retreats at Joshua Tree that I understand are incredible. I do think that the tide is turning, and a lot of the great mindfulness teachers and the Dalai Lama also are moving more and more towards compassion. I think if you were to ask the Dalai Lama now, what should I practice? He would say, start with compassion, then think about compassion, and then close with compassion. I think part of that is that our world is so crazy now. People are so stressed and they're receiving so much data from their phones and computers that the compassion is becoming less natural for people. So to study that, I don't know, go on a Sharon Salzberg retreat. We're actually going to host one with her. I think any way that you can find loving kindness and compassion, or Goenka calls it metta, would be wonderful.
Do you recommend a particular app? I use Insight Timer. I know Headspace is pretty common.
I mean, I think Headspace might be good if you're very new to meditation. Then I think it's been very charming for a lot of people. Because I have my own practice, I'm less inclined to use it. I use the timer on my cell phone, which
Ah, interesting.
how's that? That's a good app. I mean, I'm close with the Insight meditation timer folks, so I really, really like them. I know
Yep.
it's nice, and they have different bells. You can use a Tibetan
Yeah.
bell sound. I really advocate, if you have a practice, I advocate just using the stopwatch on your phone and then actually not setting it to a time because you might be in a very deep moment. My co-founder Charlie Knowles will say, don't set a timer because you might be in a very deep moment at the time that that timer goes off. So I just sort of glance down at it. I might not be the best one to ask just because I've studied meditation a lot. So I have my own practice and then I'm constantly going to the path classes.
Will the Path come out with its own app?
I mean, we are looking into online courses. I'm not sure the
Mm.
world right now needs another meditation app,
Mm.
but doing something digital will very likely be our next step. Yeah.
Well, Dina, thanks for your time. Congrats on all the progress to date, and I assume it's thepath.com for people to find more and sign up in New York.
Yeah, perfect. And if you're in New York and want to join, yeah, thepath.com/NYC. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Dina.
Thanks,
Take
Ben.
care. Bye bye.